Harper Reed stepped off a Cessna plane onto the cracked red earth of the Masai Mara, beneath a sun so fierce it felt like a dare. Heat shimmered around her like judgment, relentless and unblinking. Behind her, the bush plane exhaled one last exhausted breath before falling silent. A lone, insectile skeleton against the endless golden sprawl. The scent of scorched metal and engine oil clung to her nostrils, bitter as doubt, sharp as the question she hadn't stopped asking herself since takeoff. Was this assignment worth it? She'd come chasing wildness. What she encountered upon landing was a stare. Cold, unwelcoming, unapologetically unimpressed. The woman leaned against a dusty Land Cruiser, arms crossed, boots rooted in the dirt. Like she'd grown there, worn cargo pants, skin kissed by the sun, jaw tight with a quiet defiance. Naledi. And Harper knew, in the way one just knows when a storm is coming, that this woman was going to undo her in ways the Mara never could. Naledi, that was the name she'd been given in the assignment brief. No surname, no warmth, just that. Naledi, her local liaison, the one meant to guide her through the conservation zones for the photojournalism spread. The liaison, now, leaning against the side of a weathered Land Cruiser, arms crossed like they might hold back an avalanche. Harper extended a hand.
Hi, Harper Reed. Sorry about the delay. The pilot.
You're late,
Naledi said flatly, eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. She didn't take the hand. Instead, she took Harper's duffel, tossed it into the back of the truck, and climbed in.
So much for a warm welcome,
Harper muttered to herself. The ride to the research camp was an hour of rough terrain and even rougher silence. The only words Naledi offered were clipped, factual.
That's the Talek River. The elephants come through here in the morning. That acacia is nearly 200 years old. Don't wander at night, we've had leopard sightings.
Harper tried to make conversation, but every question bounced off Naledi like a pebble thrown at a steel door. She eventually gave up and stared out the window. It was hard to feel sorry for herself while surrounded by so much beauty. The endless golden plains, zebras grazing in peaceful oblivion, the occasional silhouette of giraffes moving like ghosts across the horizon. But the woman next to her was the opposite of that serenity. She radiated friction, command. And Harper, despite herself, was intrigued. They arrived at camp, a modest but well-built research station made of timber and corrugated iron, nestled beside a grove of fever trees. Naledi handed her a key without a word and walked off. No tour, no dinner invitation, just silence. The next morning, Harper was ready before dawn, camera bag slung over her shoulder, boots laced tight, lens cloth tucked in her back pocket. She found Naledi already by the vehicle, checking tire pressure like it was a holy ritual.
You didn't say what time we were leaving.
Naledi didn't look up.
I wasn't sure you'd get up.
Harper bristled.
I'm not here on safari.
A pause. Naledi met her eyes then, sharp, unreadable.
We'll see.
The days blurred into a rhythm of friction and proximity. Harper worked quickly, quietly, snapping shots of elephants in mist, lionesses lounging with their cubs, giraffes silhouetted against dying light. But Naledi was always there, a shadow, a chaperone, a constant reminder that she was still an outsider. They disagreed, often and with escalating precision. One afternoon, when Harper strayed too far from the vehicle for the perfect shot, Naledi's voice cut through the air like a whip.
You think this is a photo op? One wrong step and you'll be in a lion's stomach. Stay close or go home.
It's called doing my job.
Harper snapped.
Try letting me.
It's not your job to die on mine,
Naledi replied, and walked off. Later, alone, Harper kicked at a thorn bush and muttered,
Geez, I've met more personable hyenas.
Still, it was hard to hate Naledi. She was fiercely competent, moved like the landscape belonged to her, and handled the terrain with a grace Harper could only envy. She never bragged, never smiled, never wasted words. But once, Harper caught her speaking to a young zebra they'd rescued from a wire snare, not in English, not even in Swahili, but in a soft, melodic language Harper didn't recognize.
Sesotho,
Naledi explained when she saw Harper watching.
my mother's tongue.
I thought you were Kenyan.
I'm not,
she said.
I was born in Limpopo, South Africa, moved here after things.
Harper waited gently. Naledi didn't elaborate, but later that night, over a tin mug of warm beer and the sound of insects humming like electricity, she offered more.
My father was a poacher,
She said suddenly.
used to take me into Kruger when I was little. Said we were hunting to live. We weren't. He wanted ivory. Sold it to white men with soft hands and empty eyes.
Harper said nothing, unsure if she was meant to speak. She didn't. The silence sat between them, not as a wall this time, but as a seat for grief. Naledi sipped her drink.
He died when I was 15. The elephant he was tracking turned on him. Stomped him to a pulp. He died doing what he loved.
She smirked without humor.
So I started doing what he hated, tracking snares, studying migration, undoing what he taught me.
There was no self-pity in her voice, just fact. Worn, sun-dried, fact. Harper, unsure how to respond, passed her the last piece of mango from her pack. Naledi took it. Didn't thank her. Didn't need to. She only nodded her thanks. That night, they found a snare near a watering hole. A crude loop of wire nestled in grass. Naledi crouched beside it, gloved hands trembling just slightly as she cut the wire.
They're getting bolder.
She muttered. Harper knelt beside her.
How often do you find these?
Too often. And never before something's died.
She coiled the wire with clinical hands.
They hide them well, like sins.
There was a sound in her throat. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Harper reached out, her hand resting lightly on Naledi's shoulder. She half expected to be shrugged off, but Naledi didn't move. They stayed like that for a beat too long, under stars that blinked down like old gods, surrounded by the scent of warm grass and old wood. And in that pause, something shifted. Not trust, but the beginning of its ghost. They walked back to the cruiser and drove back in silence. When they reached the camp, Naledi said, barely above a whisper,
Tomorrow we go to the East Ridge. There's a lioness there. She just had cubs.
I'll be ready.
Harper said. And for the first time, Naledi looked at her, really looked, and nodded. By the time the sun spilled gold over the East Ridge, the air was already pulsing with heat and tension. Harper sat in the back of the Land Cruiser, camera balanced on her thigh like a second heartbeat. Naledi drove with both hands on the wheel and a jaw so tight it could cut bone. She hadn't said more than 3 words since they left camp.
Water?
Harper offered, holding out a metal flask.
No.
The answer landed like a stone dropped in a dry well. Harper capped the flask and leaned back, eyes scanning the terrain. They bounced over ruts and thorn bushes, jostling past herds of impalas that scattered like sparks. The Mara was alive in that feral, indifferent way only the wild could manage. Beautiful, brutal, and utterly unconcerned with whether you belonged there. They reached the ridge mid-morning, just as the lioness emerged from the scrub with the solemnity of a queen. Her coat gleamed in the sun, ribs faintly visible beneath muscle, and 3 cubs tumbled behind her like badly behaved secrets. Harper froze, then moved, slow, reverent, lowering herself with the grace of someone who'd been yelled at for rushing before. Her camera rose, lens turning like an eagle's eye. She snapped 3 shots before the lioness lifted her head and stared right at her. Not at the lens, at her.
She sees you.
Naledi murmured.
Still, don't move.
I'm not.
You're breathing too loud.
Harper smirked.
I'll try dying next time.
The lioness blinked, once, slow, then turned, nuzzled a cub, and melted back into the grass. Harper exhaled. She didn't notice Naledi watching her until she turned. There was something different in her eyes this time. Not warmth, exactly, but a softening, a recalibration.
You didn't scream.
Naledi said.
I'll give you that.
Only on the inside.
Harper thought, as she wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her sleeve and grinned. Naledi looked away, but not before Harper saw the corner of her mouth twitch. A near smile. Blink and you'd miss it. But it was there. Later they ate lunch under a lone acacia, feet in the dust, backs to the wind. The sandwiches Naledi handed out were dry and unforgiving. The silence less so. What brought you here? Naledi asked suddenly. Harper looked up.
You mean the Mara?
No. I meant why you chose to carry a 20-pound camera through lion territory for minimum pay. And even less thanks.
Harper chewed her sandwich slowly.
Honestly?
Preferably.
I got tired of pretending to care about weddings and product launches. Tired of polished smiles and Instagram filters. I wanted something real. Ugly, if it had to be. But honest.
Naledi studied her for a long moment.
This place isn't honest, it's hungry. It takes and then takes again.
Sounds like most cities I've lived in.
Naledi snorted. A sound Harper wasn't entirely sure was derision or agreement.
Don't think it's the place that's dishonest.
Harper added.
I think it's people who wear masks.
Naledi's gaze found hers. Eyes unexpectedly soft yet intently studying Harper's. Then, abruptly, Naledi stood up, brushing crumbs off her pants.
Let's go. We've got hyena territory to cross before dusk.
The moment slipped away like a shy animal, but Harper didn't chase it. That evening, the hyenas were nowhere in sight. Only the carcass of an eland, days old and already picked over. Naledi examined the bones, her face unreadable.
Found this yesterday,
She said.
It had a collar. Conservation tag. Someone's research subject. Poachers again.
Harper took photos quietly, heart heavy. The Mara took and took. But this was theft. They were heading back when the storm rolled in. A low growl on the horizon, sky smeared with bruised clouds. Naledi's knuckles tightened on the wheel.
Rain season's early.
She muttered. 10 minutes later, the Land Cruiser's tires skidded in mud, flinging the vehicle sideways into a ditch with a sound that stole all pretense of control.
Hold on.
They landed tilted, rear wheels spinning. The engine coughed, then died. Harper blinked. Rain tapped the windshield like a countdown.
You've got to be kidding me.
Naledi slammed the door open and leapt into the downpour. Harper followed, boots sinking in muck, clothes soaked in seconds.
Don't just stand there. Help me dig out the rear.
In this weather?
The rain doesn't care about your comfort. Neither do lions.
That was convincing. They worked in silence. Mud up to their ankles, the downpour blinding. Harper's hands were blistered and slick when they finally shoved the last rock under the wheel. Naledi climbed back in and turned the key. The engine caught, coughed, roared. She reversed the truck, just clear enough to hop out again. Harper leaned against the fender, gasping, soaked to the bone, mud streaking her face like war paint.
Well, that was fun.
Naledi looked at her, chest rising with breath, rain beating in her lashes.
You did okay.
Harper raised an eyebrow.
Is that a compliment?
Naledi didn't answer. Instead, she opened the passenger door and nodded toward it.
Get in. Before something with teeth decides you look like a snack.
It was the closest thing to concern Harper had heard all week. She smiled, then climbed in. That evening, Harper had expected the research camp to be quiet. A few tents, the occasional academic murmuring about migratory patterns, the distant hoot of an owl. She hadn't expected this.
Are those marshmallows?
Yes.
Came the dry reply from a wiry man in dusty glasses and a shirt that had once aspired to be white.
Imported, smuggled, highly illegal. Don't tell KWS.
That was Kenji, the unofficial camp cook and overqualified botanist with a PhD in plant resilience and a spectacular talent for turning baked beans into something that tasted almost like hope. He wore socks with his sandals, spoke like every sentence was a TED Talk, and had a laugh that scared birds. Harper glanced over at Naledi, who was methodically sharpening a bush knife by firelight, entirely ignoring the marshmallow diplomacy playing out. The fire cracked and spat, a warm flare in the encroaching dark. Around it sat the small constellation of the research team. Kenji, of course. Next to him was Julia, the British herpetologist who had somehow made snake handling look like a spiritual practice. And Sammy, the Kenyan logistics coordinator who balanced budgets and tranquilized Buffalo with equal composure. And then there was Naledi, still in her cargo pants and boots, arms folded like they might give too much away if left unchecked. Someone passed Harper a beer. So, Julia said, eyeing her over the rim of her tin cup. What's it like being shadowed by the Queen of Thorns over there? Harper blinked.
Excuse me?
Sammy snorted.
Naledi, that's what we call her, not to her face. Obviously.
Naledi didn't look up. I can hear you. Julia winked. Good. Keeps me sharp. Harper risked a glance at Naledi and found the corners of her mouth twitching. A half smile, barely there. Gone again in a blink. And just like that, Harper's chest felt tight.
So what's a fancy American doing here?
Kenji asked.
Curiosity? Boredom?
Photography, Harper said simply. Wildlife conservation journalism. Sure, but that's the what. What's the why? She hesitated. She could have said Pulitzer ambitions, or childhood dreams, or some canned answer about raising awareness. But none of it felt quite true. Not anymore.
I guess.
She shrugged.
I was tired of shooting things that didn't matter.
Silence. Even the fire seemed to pause mid-crackle, like it wanted to hear the rest. Naledi didn't say a word, but her gaze, steady, assessing, rested on Harper for longer than necessary. Julia broke the tension by poking a marshmallow into the fire. You'll find plenty that matters here. Poachers, habitat destruction, bureaucracy,
And goats.
added Kenji grimly. Don't get him started, Sammy warned. Too late. Kenji launched into a tirade about illegal grazing practices, ecosystems on the brink, and the complete indifference of herders and their goats. Harper listened, half amused, half distracted by the quiet gravity that Naledi always brought to the space she occupied. When the fire died down to embers, Naledi rose and murmured,
We move before first light.
then to Harper, in a voice low enough to be private.
Don't sleep through it.
Harper smirked.
Wouldn't dream of it.
Naledi walked off into the dark. Harper didn't realize she was still staring at the place Naledi had disappeared into until Julia elbowed her lightly. Careful, Reed. You're not the first to fall for a mystery wrapped in tactical indifference.
I'm not.
Julia just raised a brow. Harper couldn't sleep. She lay on the cot, mosquito net draped like a ghostly veil around her, listening to the sounds of the Mara. Crickets chirped like restless drummers. Something howled in the distance. Jackals, maybe. Or hyenas. She thought about Naledi's voice. Not the words, the sound, low, measured, slightly raspy at the edges like an old vinyl record. She thought about the way her hand had rested on that zebra's flank. Gentle, but steady. Like she'd done it 1,000 times and would do it 1,000 more. The woman drove her insane. Cold one minute, quietly furious the next, and then unexpectedly soft in a way that slipped under Harper's skin like heat under a door. Harper turned over, groaned into her pillow, and told herself she was not developing a crush on someone who treated conversation like a weapon and looked at her like an invasive species. Absolutely not. Dawn broke with all the ceremony of a curtain yanked open mid-dream. Harper found Naledi by the Land Cruiser, already inspecting maps and sipping coffee that smelled like regret and roasted soil.
You ready?
Naledi asked. Harper nodded.
Always.
They drove east toward the ridge. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was something else. Coiled. Humming with potential. Halfway through the drive, Naledi broke it.
You don't have to stay the full 6 weeks.
Harper blinked. Excuse me?
You can get the shots you need in half the time.
Harper turned to face her.
You trying to get rid of me?
Naledi's fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel.
I'm trying to give you options.
Harper leaned in, just enough for their shoulders to nearly brush.
Well, maybe I like it here. Even if the company's a little prickly.
Naledi's jaw flexed,
Suit yourself.
but Harper caught it. That flicker in Naledi's throat. A swallow. The smallest tell. They crested the ridge just as the sun peeled itself over the horizon, smearing the plains in gold and fire. And there, nestled in the tall grass, was the lioness. 3 cubs, all fat and curious and tumbling over each other like drunk toddlers. Harper didn't speak. She lifted her camera and started shooting, breath shallow, eyes wide. Naledi crouched beside her, not touching, but close. The kind of close that made air harder to breathe.
She's letting us close.
Harper whispered.
She knows we're not a threat. Or she doesn't care.
Naledi's voice was soft.
Mothers always care.
Harper lowered her camera.
You ever want kids?
Naledi didn't answer right away. Then,
I wanted to want them, once.
The words sat between them, fragile as glass. Harper turned. Their eyes met. It should have broken then, something in her, something in Naledi. But it didn't. It held, tense, intimate, dangerous. And then, behind them, a rustle in the grass. A snort. Naledi was up in a second, hand on her radio.
Buffalo, big male.
Sure enough, a hulking shape lumbered into view. Massive, horned, and clearly in a mood. Harper backed up, camera clutched tight.
Stay calm,
Naledi said.
and walk backward. Slowly.
They moved as one, breath sinking, nerves strung like wire. When they reached the truck, hearts hammering, Harper laughed. A breathless, wild sound. Naledi stared at her.
You're insane.
Maybe, but I'm not boring.
And just like that, Naledi laughed too. Quiet, surprised, beautiful. It was the sound of something cracking open. That night Harper couldn't sleep again. And this time she didn't even try. She stepped out into the night air, found Naledi standing alone by the fire pit, sharpening that same damn knife. Without a word, she stood beside her. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. The space between them was already burning. Naledi looked at her for a long time, then quietly said,
Some places get into your blood, others get under your skin.
Harper couldn't tell if Naledi was still warning her against staying or alluding to something else entirely, to this strange hum that seemed to flare between them lately. Harper stepped closer then, just enough. Close enough to see the gold flecks in Naledi's eyes. She raised a hand, not touching yet. Naledi didn't move away. Then, slowly, deliberately, Harper's hand whispered over Naledi's darker skin, fingers skimming softly down a hard jaw. Naledi swallowed. Harper's thumb softly brushed over a sculpted yet plump lower lip.
Skin like dark chocolate.
She whispered, soft, full, firm. Naledi's breath hitched, but she didn't look away. Harper's voice was quieter now.
Yeah, into your blood and under your skin.
Her hand stilled, as her eyes traced their way back up to Naledi's before she softly asked.
What happens then?
An owl hooted in the distance, enough to break the spell. Naledi blinked, stepped, back, just slightly.
Then you learn to live with the ache.
She said, voice husky. And then she walked away, leaving Harper with the realization that maybe, just maybe, the Masai Mara was already consuming her. Morning came wrapped in golden fog and the heavy breath of something unsaid. Harper found herself stirring long before breakfast. No dreams, just a lingering warmth from the night before. A knife glinting in firelight. And at bedtime, a silence that had felt almost safe. She stepped out of her tent barefoot, the earth still cool beneath her soles. Camp was stirring, but softly. Sammy muttered at the generator like it had insulted his mother. Mama Safi hung laundry with a focus that implied violence to any hyena foolish enough to steal a sock. Harper wandered. Not aimlessly, but not with a plan either. She found Naledi near the water tanks, sleeves rolled up, winding a hose like it owed her money. Her jaw was clenched in that way Harper now recognized as concentration, or irritation, or both.
Morning?
Harper offered, cautious. Naledi nodded without looking up.
You didn't oversleep.
Didn't sleep.
Naledi glanced at her then, eyes narrowing just enough to register concern without expressing it out loud.
Still shaken?
No, Harper said, and that was almost true. Just thinking.
Dangerous habit.
A pause. Not quite comfortable, not unfriendly either.
You always carry that knife?
Harper asked, gesturing at the empty sheath at Naledi's hip.
Always.
Even when you sleep?
Especially when I sleep.
Harper smiled. Romantic? Naledi's eyes lingered on her for a beat too long.
You have a strange idea of romance,
she said, mouth twitching wryly. Harper shrugged.
Comes with the territory.
Another silence, this one heavier. The kind that builds, moment by moment, into something dense enough to step around. Naledi broke it first.
You meant what you said yesterday? About staying.
Harper met her gaze, all humor gone.
Yeah.
Naledi's fingers flexed against the coil of hose.
It's not easy here. The heat, the politics, the animals, the people.
I know.
You think you know.
Harper took a slow breath.
Maybe I want to find out.
The research camp was a strange little machine, grinding into motion every morning with groggy limbs and too strong coffee. By the third week, Harper had memorized the rhythm. The complaints about generator fuel, the smell of overcooked uji, Kenji's tragic attempts at proper Swahili, and Julia's daily lectures on why reptiles were criminally misunderstood. But beneath the surface hum of camp life, something else had begun to hum louder. Harper felt it in the way Naledi moved around her, closer sometimes, and then further, like a tide pulling away just when it threatened to flood. She hated it and wanted more of it. That morning, they were cataloging elephant herds, Harper in the back seat with her camera, Naledi at the wheel, sunglasses masking everything but the firm line of her mouth.
The matriarch's tagged.
Naledi murmured, lifting her binoculars.
Ear notch on the left. That's W19,
She said, referring to one of the tracking methods deployed under the 96 Elephants Conservation Campaign. Harper focused her lens. The elephant loomed large and ancient in her viewfinder, her skin cracked like bark, her eyes full of centuries.
She looks like she knows things,
Harper said.
She does. She has survived 3 droughts and 2 major poaching spikes.
She got a name?
Naledi hesitated.
Malkia.
Queen.
Harper translated. Naledi looked at her finally. Just a flicker.
Not bad for a tourist.
Harper smirked.
I'm learning.
They sat in silence, watching the herd drift through the grass. Babies with ears too big for their heads tried to charge guinea fowl. Mothers bumped flanks and trunks, like old friends. The wind stirred dust into something golden. Naledi shifted in her seat.
You remind me of someone.
Harper turned.
That's supposed to be a compliment?
Not sure yet.
She didn't elaborate, and Harper didn't press. That night, the Mara felt closer somehow, more alive. The grass hissed secrets, and the stars blinked almost conspiratorially. Harper couldn't sleep. Again. So she did what she'd started doing most nights. She wandered, quietly, past Kenji's hammock, where there was snoring, past Mama Safi's tent, which was humming gospel, and toward the dying fire. Naledi was there, of course, same knife, same hands, same silence. Harper sat.
You always this consistent?
She asked. Naledi's eyes flicked toward her.
You always this curious?
Yes.
That earned the barest lift of one brow.
Must be exhausting.
It is.
Harper agreed. But it keeps me alive. Naledi turned the knife in her hands.
Curiosity can also get you killed.
Harper leaned in, her voice low. And what's life without a little risk? Naledi didn't look at her, but she stilled. Just for a moment. Just enough. Harper could feel the air tighten. Then Naledi said quietly,
Why are you really here, Harper?
Harper blinked. I told you. Photography. Journalism. Elephants that look like royalty.
That's the what. I'm asking the why.
Harper exhaled, stared into the fire. Because I was tired of pretending to care about things that didn't matter. Because the world's on fire and my work felt like smoke signals. Because I needed something real. Naledi said nothing. But she didn't look away. Harper swallowed. And maybe because I wanted to meet someone who gave a damn. Silence again. Heavy, laced with something raw. Then Naledi said,
Be careful what you wish for.
And walked away. They didn't speak for 2 days. Not really. Naledi was all clipped radio dispatches and efficient briefings. Harper responded in nods and distant professionalism. Julia noticed, so did Sammy. Kenji tried to intervene with extra coffee and unsolicited life advice about unresolved sexual tension. That didn't help, but on the 3rd day, they found the snare. It was dug deep in a dry gully, nearly invisible, just a loop of wire buried in dust. But the zebra wasn't so lucky. She had stumbled, bled, suffered. She hadn't made it. Naledi was stone-faced, methodical. She called the Kenya Wildlife Service, logged the coordinates, tagged the carcass for scavenger monitoring. Harper couldn't stop staring. Bastards, she muttered. Naledi glanced at her, cool and unreadable.
There are hundreds like this. Every month.
And you still do this?
Because if I don't, who will?
Harper felt something crack in her, something idealistic and naive and foolishly American. Naledi turned away.
Come on. Vultures will be here soon.
But Harper stayed frozen.
It's not fair.
No.
Naledi said.
It's not.
And that was all. That night, the fire burned lower. The stars were fewer. Even the crickets sounded tired. Harper found Naledi sitting on the steps of the water tower, legs dangling like a kid who'd climbed too high and didn't want to come down. She climbed up beside her. This time, Naledi didn't flinch. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Harper said softly,
I used to think being brave meant running into the storm.
Naledi stared out at the dark.
And now?
I think maybe it's staying when it hurts.
Naledi's voice was quiet.
Then maybe you are brave.
They sat in that silence, thick, real. A new kind of tension now, not just heat, but gravity. The weight of truths neither of them had said out loud. Harper turned toward her, their thighs brushing, warm through the fabric. Naledi didn't move, didn't speak. Her breath was calm, but Harper could feel the pulse just under her skin. I don't know what this is, Harper said. Naledi met her eyes.
Neither do I.
But they didn't look away. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. The moment held. Just shy of something dangerous. Then Naledi whispered,
Good night, Harper.
Her breath brushed Harper's cheek, warm as a secret. She stood, slowly, reluctantly, and walked away. Again, but this time, Harper didn't feel abandoned. She felt seen, touched, and maybe that was worse. The next morning dawned red and restless, as if the Mara itself had secrets it was tired of keeping. Harper rolled out of her tent later than usual, the sky already a smear of copper and gray. She was bleary-eyed and dehydrated, her heart still full of things unsaid. Naledi's voice from the night before lingered. Quiet, honest, unarmored. It had lodged itself somewhere just beneath her ribs. Camp had moved on, as it always did. Kenji wrestled with an antenna. Julia cursed gently at a lethargic Sammy. Mama Safi sang as she chopped tomatoes, but Harper felt off-kilter, like a picture frame knocked askew by an invisible hand. She caught sight of Naledi across the clearing, clipboard in hand, issuing instructions to the rangers with her usual efficiency. Her braid was half loosened, curling around her throat like something intimate. Her voice was low and serious, focused, but Harper could still see the strain at the corners of her mouth. Like she hadn't slept either. When Naledi turned to her, their eyes met for only a second, but something passed between them, a tremor. They were scheduled for an overnight at the northern perimeter, setting up a motion sensor camera near an elephant corridor recently disturbed by human activity. Sammy was supposed to go, but begged out with a mysterious stomach ailment that sounded suspiciously like hangover regret. That left Naledi and Harper, and 30 miles of isolation between them and the rest of the camp. The ride was long, bumpy, and filled with a silence that wasn't quite awkward, but wasn't comfortable either. Dust coiled behind them in long golden ribbons. Acacia trees passed like ghosts. A single giraffe paused mid-chew to judge them as they bounced past. Harper clutched her camera in her lap like it might anchor her.
You ever just disappear into the bush like this on purpose?
Naledi didn't look away from the road.
Sometimes. The silence helps me think.
Harper nodded.
It's loud in my head lately.
Yeah.
Naledi said.
Me too.
By late afternoon, they'd reached the camera site, a narrow game trail cut between rocky hills, the trees twisted like they'd been sculpted by wind and memory. Naledi worked efficiently, setting the camera, noting GPS coordinates, brushing Harper's shoulder once, barely, with her arm as she knelt beside the tree. Harper didn't move. Her breath snagged.
You okay?
Naledi asked, eyes flicking to hers.
I'm not used to people who touch like that and then walk away.
Naledi's hands paused, then dropped.
I touch when I want to.
She said quietly.
And I walk away when I have to.
The words landed like a stone in Harper's chest. They made camp just as the sun bled into the horizon. Naledi pitched the tent with the kind of calm that comes from muscle memory and years of not relying on anyone else. Harper made a fire and failed spectacularly, which earned her a quiet smile and a dry,
We can't all be survival experts.
Later, they ate in near darkness, beans and rice from a dented thermos, the fire low and moody. Harper stretched out on a canvas roll beside the tent, the stars unraveling above her like a secret. Naledi sat beside her, cross-legged, knife unsheathed and resting lightly on her thigh.
Do you always carry that thing?
Harper asked, voice softer now.
Even when you're safe?
Naledi didn't answer right away.
Safe's not a place, Harper. It's a feeling. And feelings lie.
Silence again. But this one was warm. Harper turned her head.
You ever get tired of pretending nothing gets to you?
Naledi's mouth twitched. Not a smile. Not quite.
You think I pretend?
I think you feel more than you let on.
And that's when Naledi looked at her, really looked, like she was cataloging Harper's faults and still finding something worth saving.
I don't let people in easy.
She said.
I'm not asking for easy.
The air thickened, the space between them a live wire. Then Harper reached out, slow and deliberate, and ran her thumb across Naledi's lower lip. It was soft, warm, real. Naledi didn't move, didn't stop her. Her breath hitched, and Harper felt it, how close they were to the edge of something irrevocable. But Naledi pulled back just slightly, her voice low and unsteady.
If I kiss you right now, I won't stop.
Harper's heart hammered.
Maybe I don't want you to.
Their foreheads touched. Not quite a kiss. Not yet. But Harper's hand cupped Naledi's cheek, and Naledi's fingers slid over Harper's wrist, holding her there, grounding her. For a moment, the whole world narrowed to that touch. The pulse under skin, the ache under restraint. Then Naledi whispered,
Not here.
and Harper knew she wasn't saying no. She was saying, not yet. That night, they lay side by side in the tent, separated by inches and entire lifetimes of hesitation. Harper stared at the roof, listening to Naledi breathe. It was sometime past midnight when the storm finally broke. Not in the sky, though clouds still hung low and bruised above the Mara, but inside her. Harper lay in the dark, jaw clenched, eyes wide open, heartbeat tripping over itself like it was trying to catch up with something unspoken. Beside her, Naledi shifted, just a murmur of movement, a rustle of the sleeping bag, a breath that didn't quite sound like sleep. Harper turned her head. Naledi was facing her. Eyes open, watching. There was no hiding it now. No coy glances, no brushed shoulders or almost kisses hung in the safety of maybe. Just the truth of it, raw and steady in the thick night air between them. Harper swallowed.
You're not asleep.
Naledi's voice was quiet.
Neither are you.
A pause. Then Harper said,
I keep thinking about your mouth.
The honesty landed like a match in dry grass. Naledi didn't flinch, didn't smirk or soften the moment with a joke. She reached out instead, just her fingertips at first, tracing the inside of Harper's wrist where her pulse was going wild. Still not here, Naledi murmured, her voice husky now, tinged with want. But I'm done pretending. Harper leaned in before she could talk herself out of it. Their mouths met, no preamble, no hesitation this time. It was a kiss meant to undo them both. Hungry and hot, and 5 chapters of longing distilled into heat and breath, and the soft, stunned sound Naledi made when Harper slipped a hand into her braid. Naledi pulled her closer, and Harper followed, clumsy in her urgency, catching a knee on the sleeping bag and laughing against Naledi's lips. It broke something open, made Naledi laugh too, low and breathless, before she kissed Harper harder. They didn't stop. They kissed until Harper was dizzy and Naledi was underneath her, fingers sliding beneath Harper's shirt with a reverence. That felt like a prayer and a dare all at once.
You're sure?
Naledi asked, the words against her throat now.
I've never been more.
Harper said, and meant every syllable. Clothes were pushed aside, not torn off in some dramatic frenzy, slow, careful, intimate. They learned each other with mouths and hands and murmured questions. Naledi kissed Harper's shoulder like it was something holy. Harper whispered Naledi's name like it was the only word she'd ever needed. Outside, the night pulsed with sound, lions calling in the far distance, crickets loud with insistence, the occasional shuffle of something wild and unseen. But inside the tent, there was only heat. Movement. The soft gasps of two women choosing to fall. It wasn't perfect. It was better. When it was over, they lay tangled, bare skin pressed together, breaths still sinking. Naledi spoke first.
You're in trouble.
She whispered. Harper smiled against her neck.
You kissed me back.
Naledi turned, brushing damp hair from Harper's forehead.
I told you I touch when I want to.
And walk away when you have to?
Naledi didn't answer right away. Then,
Maybe I don't want to this time.
Harper looked up at her.
Then don't.
The silence returned, but this one didn't hum with tension. It rested, settled. Naledi pulled the blanket up around them. Harper curled into her chest. The Mara, ever watchful, kept its secrets for now. Morning found them wrapped in the soft kind of silence that only comes after something brave. The tent was dim, golden light leaking in through the seams, casting shadows on Naledi's bare shoulder where Harper's fingers traced idle patterns. Neither of them spoke. Not yet. Harper could hear the birds waking up outside. Doves, hornbills, the occasional indignant squawk of a francolin too early for anyone's taste. She didn't want to move. Not because of comfort, but because she wasn't sure the moment would survive it. As if shifting even an inch would return them to the uncertain gravity that had existed before Naledi kissed her like she meant it. But Naledi moved first. She sat up slowly, the blanket falling around her waist, hair tousled and lips still swollen from sleep, or from Harper. Her expression was unreadable, not cold, just recalibrating. Harper pushed up on her elbow.
Hey.
Naledi turned to her. Her eyes softened.
Hey.
That was it. No grand declarations, no apologies. Just two people on the other side of restraint, trying to figure out how to exist in the after.
You regret it?
Harper asked, voice quieter than she meant it to be. Naledi blinked once, then again.
Do I look like someone who regrets it?
Harper smiled.
No. You look like someone doing emotional math.
Naledi laughed under her breath.
Maybe I am.
She stood, pulled on a shirt, and stepped outside into the pale light. Harper followed, less for the sunrise, more for the space between them that she suddenly couldn't bear to stretch too long. The bush was damp with dew. A herd of impala picked their way across the far ridge, tails flicking, alert and beautiful and unbothered. Harper stood beside Naledi, both of them watching in silence.
I've spent so long building walls that even the good things feel like a threat.
Naledi said finally.
I know the feeling.
Harper said. Naledi turned to her.
But you're not a threat. You're just a choice I didn't know I was allowed to want.
The wind stirred between them. Harper took her hand.
I don't need forever,
She said.
I just want to know if this gets to be real. Not just the Mara, not just this week, but something real.
Naledi's jaw worked like she was chewing on something heavier than words. Then she nodded once, firm and certain.
Okay,
She said.
then let's make it real.
2 weeks later, the main camp was quiet. Bags were packed, farewells mumbled. Julia was already crying and blaming it on dust allergies, while Kenji made a whole production of offering Harper a carved wooden elephant and pretending not to care. Harper hugged Mama Safi last. The older woman looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Come back next season, or sooner. Bring better shoes." Harper smiled.
Deal.
Naledi stood by the truck, arms folded, sunglasses hiding everything her mouth refused to say. But when Harper approached, she pulled them off.
Your car is going to be late.
Naledi said.
I made sure of it.
Harper raised an eyebrow.
Abuse of power?
I prefer to call it strategic scheduling.
They stood there for a long moment. Harper touched her arm.
You going to write to me?
No,
Naledi said.
I'm going to call and send ridiculous photos of warthogs in compromising positions.
Harper grinned.
I'll hold you to it.
Naledi hesitated. Then, in front of everyone and no one, she leaned in and kissed Harper. Just once. Just enough. And Harper felt it. How something small could still be monumental. When she finally climbed into the car, Harper looked back. Naledi stood where she'd left her, arms crossed, expression unreadable again, but now Harper knew better. She knew what was underneath, and that was enough. For now, for what might come next. As the car drove off and the Mara opened around her one last time, Harper felt it bloom in her chest. This story wasn't over, not even close.